So it is 7 o'clock. We'll get the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the June 20th, 2017 Monadnock Regional School District School Board meeting. Our first order of business are public comments. And our first public comment are the 6th grade students that participated in the Ferry Beach Ecology School. And they're going to give a presentation of cell phones, turn them off. So we want to welcome the 6th grade students to give a nice presentation to the school board. So take it away.
So they were gracious enough to let the 6th graders present their learning to you at the Ferry Beach Ecology School. We'll be quick, but they created this presentation for the assembly at Cutler School and did such a fabulous job that we wanted to share with you.
So we want to make sure that you also, students, that you're talking into a microphone because we want to capture your voices. So
It's going to come way up here.
So make sure that you stand to the podium where the microphone is, so that way we can make sure that we can all hear you and the television crew can hear you, because there's thousands and thousands and millions of subscribers that watch our school board meetings. Don't be nervous.
They're all registered under one name.
Now we just have to wait for the projector to come up because they told me that I had to move it. Okay. Do we want to hit a couple of lights back there that we had put on for the beginning? No. Help? No.
That takes a lot of courage.
Okay. We have to, no. You get to stay there. I get to stay here, sorry. Squat.
Today we'll be sharing with you a little information about what we did at the ecology school. We have prepared a slideshow about our lessons that we participated in while on our trip. We had the opportunity to share this presentation to our whole school to get them excited about attending when they are in 6th grade. The salt marsh helps the inflow of nutrients and fresh water flow through the salt water. The salt marshes in the state of Maine is protected, so you need a permit to visit. The mud is so squishy, so you can't step in certain areas. We tested the salinity of the water and nutrients in the soil. The salt marsh is a mixture of fresh water and salt water. One of the lessons we did on our trip was jetty, beach, and dunes. A jetty is a wall of rocks that tells us where the beach ends and where the river begins. A dune is a grassy, sandy part right before the beach starts. During the lesson, we experienced how some sea creatures lived, like the surf clam, moon snail, and sand dollar. We also learned some adaptations of a lot of different beach organisms. Towards the end of the lesson, we learned how beaches were created.
Abiotic adventures was when we got to study rocks, dirt, and water, which are non-living, which is abiotic. We used a salinity meter to see if the water was salt or fresh water. We also used a thermometer to see the temperature of the water. We sampled some of the soil and put it on our books, and then overall at the end we compared our notes.
The tide pools had tons of cool creatures there. One of the things we learned about is how many animals ate. For example, periwinkles drill into their prey and eat from the inside. Fun fact, if you hum to a periwinkle, it will come out of its shell. Sea stars like to rip open their prey shells and then eat. Barnacles hold onto rocks for their entire lives and grab whatever plankton or algae goes into its tentacles. We also learned about the 3-point rule. You put either 2 feet and 1 hand or 2 hands and 1 foot on the rocks when you're climbing. The abiotic items in the tide pools are rocks, the sun, and water. Some biotic items are periwinkles, sea stars, barnacles, cone snails, sea sponges, sea urchins, and seagulls.
Another one of our lessons we did was nature at night. We went into the forest at night and played games of how animals hear, smell, and see. We also learned how long a tree's root was. We walked around the forest and saw the wonders until we reached a wood platform, which we laid down on and listened to the animals. Then we went to the beach and saw that too. It was a really fun lesson.
The town meeting. The town meeting is the debate between the townspeople. Students roleplay as townspeople in different groups where they use their ecological knowledge and debating skills to discuss the pros and cons about the jetty. The jetty is a large pile of rocks projecting into an ocean or a large body of water. The pros about the jetty are that it brings in a lot of fishermen because it's a great place to fish, and it creates a lot of business and brings in tourists, which means more money for shops along the jetty. The cons are that the jetty causes erosions. An erosion is an act of being eaten away or destroyed over a long period of time, caused by winds, waves, or glaciers, which means the shops and houses will soon either have to shut down, be removed, or slowly sink into the sand closer to the ocean and be destroyed. In the end, students have to put their facts and their ideas together and find solutions that is best for everyone.
We hope you all enjoyed this presentation.
All of the photos in there were actually photos of Ferry Beach that were taken while we were there. So those weren't internet stuff. That was pictures of the kids while they were there at the different places. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Say cheese, Mike.
All right, we'll get it out of the way.
That was kind of nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like that.
Good job, students.
Yes.
One other fun, interesting fact. So they also had stations set up in the high school gymnasium a few weeks ago, and during that time, I got to come in, and many adults came in, teachers and other people from the outside, and got to listen to their presentations. And my former background, I'm a marine biologist. That's what I went to school for. So I'm very knowledgeable about tidal pools. So my first question to them was, what is Strongylus and Trotostroiboxiensis, which is the scientific name for the green sea urchin, and many of them actually knew it. I was pleasantly surprised as a sixth grader they were not only exposed to the scientific names of the creatures that they saw, but many of them remembered it.
Did you know about the humming to the periwinkle thing, though?
I did. But, Mrs. Blair, could you turn that light on? It's over on this side, the first one, please. Thank you. Also, another piece of information before we move on is much of the cost that went into paying for this trip was fundraised from many of the students. So while the district participated or contributed a small portion of it, a majority of the actual cost came from fundraising. So something to put in the back of your mind that you may want to consider as a district if you think it's a good thing. Yeah, Lisa?
For next year, we were able to secure grant funding as well to offset a significant portion of the costs, so the fundraising burden should be less. That's something that Jeremy can speak more to. He's the one that sought out the grant and was able to. We actually had to ask the Department of Education to contact the federal government about their guidelines for the grant because the department was interpreting them one way and saying, no, we couldn't use the funds this way. So they approached the federal government and asked their guidance, and the federal government said, yes, you can use it for that. So we won.
Is that a cost that is going up regularly?
I don't think it's going up significantly. I think there's been slight adjustments, but at least the last couple of years, it's been about the same. But I can't remember the exact number.
I'm guessing, and maybe Mrs. Blair or Mrs. Simzik actually know the full amount, but I want to say it's about $25,000 for the entire district.
Yep.
And last year, I don't believe the district contributed a significant amount, so it left a burden.
We should look at that.
For the kids, and they were able to do it. You know, I applaud them through a lot of different activities that they did. They were able to do that, so. So so to reiterate what they're participating in from the back of the room where the mics don't pick them up. The cost was about $30,000 and the students were, their fee was about $300 per student. So it's not a small amount. And I think almost every single kid in the 6th grade actually participated in it. Which is, it's also, from my perspective as a former coach and parent, this is the first opportunity where you have all the 6th grade students from all of the outlying schools coming to a program towards the end of the school year, interacting prior to their moving on to the 7th grade in the middle school. So it allows for that, getting to meet people, kind of breaking the ice, a lot of different things. So it's a positive, and then obviously they learn stuff too.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can the teachers tell us how these students were selected? Were they picked by their peers? They all did such a great job.
Actually, they volunteered. We asked the volunteers to present, because some students are really, it's intimidating to get up in front of the whole school of grades 3 through 6 and all the staff. So we asked students to volunteer to do the presentation, so that's how that came about.
And were these all Cutler students?
Yes, these were Cutler students. I think Mike spoke to the little group studies that we had here at Step Up Day. Those study groups were actually from various schools. So there was representatives from all the schools at those study groups that presented at Step Up. And so they did presentations for the public to come through. But the board was asked, was invited. I don't know if that invitation went out well or not, but you were invited to come see their presentations. We had a couple of parents come, some students came, a few staff members came, but yeah, they did a great job.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments with regard to Ferry Beach in the presentation? Okay. Are there any other members of the public that have signed up?
Janine.
Okay.
Good evening, and I am a 1982 graduate. I did not go to Ferry Beach, but we did go to Camp Union, so I can speak to that. I was just thinking, I have my best friends because I met at Camp Union through that. I was in Swansea, and then we met, I didn't even know Fitzwilliam and Troy way out there and stuff too. So it was an invaluable experience then at Camp Union for me, and I know the kids come back all the time. So it really is something that really bridges and brings everybody together, and then they start off, knowing some people too. So that's just from a long time ago. So, but I'm here to speak to you tonight about two exciting initiatives or things that have started in our district in regard to wellness. So I'll go into who I am. Some of you know who I am and what we've been doing, and some don't. So, but it's an important update to see where we've come. So it's pretty exciting stuff. So my name is Janine LeClaire, and I am a graduate, a Husky, a very proud Husky, and still proud to be here in 1982. This is my 23rd year in the district. 18 years I've been in local elementary schools. I came up to the high school to start, was asked to start a remediation program. I was there for 3 years. And then this year, as a middle school integration specialist. I worked on literacy in this year. This upcoming year, I'll speak to my position next year will be in the high school to be integrating literacy and stuff as well, and also some wellness. So where these two initiatives started were last year, when I first came to the high school, like I said, I'm from here. And, drugs, alcohol, all of that have never gone, they were here when I was here and all of that. So what happened to me in my life was I had 3 different friends who their children were had issues with heroin. So one was a girlfriend, and these are older, all established families that were, my kids knew their kids and all that. One had to save her son from heroin. Another one is her son was dealing and is now in jail for heroin. And another one of my kids played soccer with died. So I didn't know a lot about heroin, and I didn't, and I'm still learning. So I went to Keene Hates Heroin. They had a forum, and to learn from my own education. And when I was there, Becky Russell, Melissa Johnson from our district was there as well too. So Linda, about that time, Linda Calliger had asked us to start some focus groups here at the high school, some cell phones and some things that we wanted to work on as a school. So I asked Becky, I said, this would be something that I would be interested in, because quite frankly, I couldn't watch it anymore. I can't watch what is happening to students. I know that they're there, but they're not there. And all of their many resources, again, from, I've been here a long time, from guidance and resource that we had are no longer there. So even us as teachers and educators, we don't even have people to ask about some of the signs and symptoms or help. So I just asked Becky and asked Linda, I said, are you something that you'd want to be interested in doing a focus group? And Becky was, and Linda said, certainly. So that's how it started. So I put out an email to the staff, and myself, Becky Russell, Mary Shepherdson, and Chris Aguda Brown started it last year. And we really didn't know where to start, except that people like ourselves were seeing it. So what we started doing last year, we just did it in the high school, and we called it Monadnock Regional High School Drug Awareness and Prevention Focus Group. And so some of the activities that I brought to you last year, but just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, we kicked it off in October with Red Ribbon Week. And not just one day where you put a ribbon, we wanted to be able to make this, to start getting this message across to students. So we all started out with having them, where did Red Ribbon Week come? So they all did this in advisory. We had that week, we had each one of the advisories come up with the theme for that year was respect yourself and be drug free. So each one of the advisories decorated their door with pledges and designed them with sticky notes about what they could do instead of doing drugs. On Wednesday, we had an auditorium assembly with everybody where Mrs. Russell presented a PowerPoint about drugs and also getting students. We wanted to hear, what did students want to know about? If we're going to start doing some things, what did you want to hear about? And we also had at that assembly students, all of the people and resources we introduced each one of them in the auditorium, so students had people in the school to come and they could speak to, and we all signed the banner against doing drugs as well too. We had tulips that we planted in the front, and to planting the promise of not doing it as drugs as well too. So from that survey, then what we came up with, what during the Red Ribbon Week, what students wanted to see for the rest of the year, and heroin and tobacco at last year were the two that they wanted to know about. So we had in November, we had the staff also do a survey as well too. So that's where we based on our activities for the year. In December, we wanted to get information out to parents, and Becky Russell, we had a parent information night on December 7th, and no one came, not one. So the other good thing that came of that, though, is we also had community. Hope Driscoll and Sarah Johnston from the community came in, and we got to start planning about what we needed to do within our district. And there's no funding, again, too. This is all done without funding, without anyone to have, everybody that has done anything has received nothing, has done it all out of the kindness of their hearts. December, we had, in January, we kicked off the year for decision making, because we noticed whatever level the kids making decisions. So Rick Van Weckler came to the high school a few years ago, and Jed Butterfield recommended him. He came and spoke to the kids about making decisions and how it affected their lives. And he was a very powerful presenter for the kids. The kids and the staff asked him to come back again, and we had him come this year. Then we also wanted to do something more than just as education, but what can you do besides just saying no and getting them some education? So we had a cabin fever night in January, and that's where we had we hosted in the cafeteria, where we had activities, and we had music, activities, board games, a group activity that students could do. So something besides what could you do? A lot of things, a lot of kids, including myself when I was here, said there's not a lot to do around here. So we gave them some things to do, and the kids gave us feedback about doing that as well too. It wasn't so well attended. Kids said more because kids actually here have a hard time getting to something like that. They're either in sports or something, so just doing something during the day or after school, they said would be better. So again, we had kids all along giving us feedback. In March, we held a health fair. And before this, prior to this, I started to, my kids went to Keene High School. I knew Kim Baker at Keene High School in guidance, and they'd been doing a lot of things. So I met with her and to see about some of the things, how they got their initiative started. And one of the things they did was a health fair during lunches, so for the kids. So we did that. We held it in the Discovery Center, and we had students and staff members and community members, and both middle and high school could come to that. Matt, Karen, and Mo did lunch, like an open gym that day. Carrie Goldsmith is a yoga teacher from the Y. She came in. Shannon, our nurse, did high blood pressure. Brandon West and Ben Tatro came from the Swansea Fire Department and did CPR. We had Mary Drew. She did drug facts, awareness, and prevention. Kate McNally was from the Tobacco Coalition, and she did about not smoking. She also came in for an assembly before that as well too. And we had Linda Reinhardt came in and did Zen Tango with the kids for an art piece, and we had adult coloring with Jen Gilner Blinn, who was our art teacher. And we wrapped up the week with nutrition with Tom Walsh, and Christina Parshall from the UNH Co-op came in and did nutrition stuff. So it was really successful, and so therefore that's also the basis for what we had too this year. In April was Alcohol Awareness Month, so we had Trish W., a woman that came in to talk to us about the effects of alcohol. Don't trust, don't talk or feel. So it was an interactive presentations for the kids 9 through 12 that was well received as well. And then we wrapped up the year with a panel discussion. So we had people from the community. We had Artie was a person in recovery. We had Mark Howard from the Keene Fire Chief. We had Rob Eccleston, our Swansea Sergeant Swansea Police. We had Mick Sanchez, the Deputy Fire Chief of Swansea, and Sharon Rose, a Serenity Center recovery coach. And we had a panel discussion where the kids asked, before that, we had the kids come up with questions to ask the panel, and so the kids asked the questions to the panel as well, too, and that was well received. And the other thing that we learned from hosting something like that is you would think the fire, the police, people were working together. This was a great forum for them to come in and talk to one another about doing it. And then we had some students actually started getting involved as well too. We've asked kids to be involved all along. Not until that point had we, but we had Fiona Pike did a stress survey for seniors, and we also had Emma Marcoux as our senior project did National Alliance on Mental Health. She did In Your Own Voices also. So at the end of all that, we had, it worked well, and we were just at the beginning of the taste of it, so we used a survey for staff and students at the end of that year as well, too, to where we are this year. So what we decided to do this year was expand it not only to the high school, but to the middle school, and also not just to be drug awareness and prevention to wellness. So we renamed it, put it out again to everybody, the Monadnock Regional Middle High School Wellness Committee. So that's what we're known as of today. Myself, Becky Russell, Mary Shepherdson, and then we also had Matt Karen, the PE teacher, Sharon Tarbox, our nurse, and also Nancy Mason, a community member, joined us. So we started off right at the year with a back-to-school wellness fair. We had people, Peter Siebert and Stacy Wilbur from the Keene Y came in to do activities with the kids. We had Kevin Youngman, Yankee Lanes. He participated in fall signups, and Tom Walsh came in for healthy food choices. We also had on Wednesday Jennifer Tever. She's from the Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention. She talked about healthy relationships with the kids. She had some games and stuff they did. And Nancy Hill did a Fuel Up program and flag football with the kids. And on Thursday, we wrapped it up with yoga with Rebecca Marshall from the Mindful Center. So we tried to get a little bit of different activities for everybody. We kicked off again with Red Ribbon Week. We had the theme this year was You Only Live Once, YOLO. We did a variety of activities with the middle and high school. Sharon Rose was a recovery coach. She came in, she spoke to the middle and to the high school about what a recovery coach does and how they help people and families. We had also had them do a survey again, and the two topics for this year were heroin and stress, both in the middle and the high school. We didn't have the middle school do a survey last year. This year we had them both, and those were the top two in both. So that's how we framed the year. We also worked with Market Basket, and they gave us donated paper bags, and the kids decorated them in advisory. Then we brought them back to Market Basket, and they were distributed with drug, alcohol, and awareness messages through there. And then the whole school wore red on Friday. And then what we did from that's from the heroin and the stress that we wanted to focus on, we did before the holidays. We called it the gift of good health with stress reducing activities for the kids. So the week before vacation, college kids, if they're going to college, applications have to be done. There's sports going on, there's musicals. It's really stressful for a lot of them. So Monday, I did 2 minutes of silence on the speaker. We all just were quiet for 2 minutes. And then we also had laughter. Mr. Lambert from the middle school picked out a funny video for us to all watch, as laughter being a stress reducing. Some thought it was funny, some not. But and then Friday, Mrs. Burrows played holiday music through the week for people. So just some things to lighten things up. In February, we had Mr. Van Weckler come back. He spoke during interventions and extension times again too. And Becky Russell also had a Respect Week also there. So those were our February activities. In March, what we did to kind of keep the stress-reducing activities in the middle and high school, we had 99 coping skills. So they would every Wednesday, Jen Burrows or Beth Guyan would read what the stress-reducing tips were, and then in advisories or people would also talk about those, how they could use those too. And then in April, we had our second Spring Into Good Health fair. And we had people came, instead of one day, we had people requested to come for the week. So that week, we had Hope Driscoll from the Greater Monadnock Region Substance Misuse Prevention, coordinator of Monadnock Voices for Prevention Center for Population Health Strategy and Practice from the Cheshire Medical Center in Dartmouth. She worked with us all week, and I could not remember all of that. But she came in all week and did activities, and they had bling and stuff for the kids, as well as healthy behaviors with Sarah Johnston. She's the director and coordinator of Monadnock Alcohol and Drug Abuse Coalition. Madak, you might know her from, and so they were with us all week with the kids, and it was very beneficial. When we moved it into the some days we had it in the Discovery Center, some days we had it in the cafeteria, depending on the amount of kids and things that we had. And then on Tuesday, Kevin Youngman came back in to do bowling. We had kids that signed up in the fall for bowling leagues and kids that signed up in the winter. So not necessarily kids that are on other sports. So that was well received. And then we also had Rick Van Weckler came back this time, just with the high school this time. And he brought inmates with him who were addicted to heroin. And so spoke to the students about that. Again, all the presentations were very powerful. So Rick followed up again with his decision making for the middle and the high school in February, and then also just with the high school and having to do with heroin. And then we wrapped up the week with facts about sugar. Tom Walsh did things about the kids and Monster drinks and things that they drink and having them aware of that. Shannon also again gave blood pressure so the kids and staff could find out about their blood pressure. Nancy Hill did the President's Physical Fitness Challenge. So again, the week went really well. So where are we now? We had the staff do a survey in June, and the two areas from all the activities that staff would like to see us work on are not only the students but themselves. So there's a lot of discussion about reducing the stress for all of us. So that's what we're going to work on this year. I'm contacted with, there's a New Hampshire Department of Student Wellness, and also some of the community resources are going to come in and help us. And my position will be different next year, so hopefully at the high school we can start integrating through advisory some of these activities on a daily basis, and we're excited about that. So that is that. So I want to thank everyone that has been part of this effort, and so it's growing. And and we also have students that are going to be with us next year. We have some students that have asked to come and present in front of the kids, and we have 6 of them now that want to either they probably won't be at our meetings all the time, but they want to be in front of students. They want to give activities, and they want to be part of this message getting out. So it's really exciting, and that's a mix of kids too. So we're pretty excited about that. So an offshoot of this happened when I was asked to, from going to this Keene Hates Heroin and a couple things that were hosted locally, the mayor of Keene did an ad hoc committee to find out about the community and what we could do. So he asked if I would be part of the education piece. So I worked on with some education people. And there were 28 different constituencies in Keene that worked together. So the woman that facilitated all of this was Lauren Brissett. So the ad hoc committee, their mission was to see what everyone was seeing in the local communities and what could come back for recommendations to the Keene City Council. So the woman that facilitated that was Lauren Brissett. She's from the New Hampshire Cooperative Extension, and that's how I met her. And she had worked with the Keene School District when they had a teacher who died a few years ago, and so that's when they really started to have the effort. So she worked with their staff, and so I asked it and if she would be willing to work with us to update our policies, and she did. So we went with Lisa and Stedman. I met with all the admin and Lisa. We met with the policy committee, Lauren and I, last year, and then so we were able to look at through the whole year to be able to look at our substance abuse policy, and we have the revision and review that you have seen. And as of Monday, we all came in, and we also have the procedures. So we've got a little bit of work to that. We'll get to that to you as well too. But just so you know, the people that were involved in this were Jeremy Rathbun sent out a district email for people, so it would be a representative of a lot of people. So Lauren Brissett was a facilitator, myself was a co-facilitator, and then Lisa Witt, Lisa Spencer, and Ryan Schaefer were part of the administration that have supported this. Frank DeTouris, our school security officer, was part of it. Becky Russell, Diane Hardy, Melissa Johnson, our guidance people from our district. Sharon Boucher and Jen Heiss were parents that were on our committee, and then Joanne Stroshine, as you all know, is a teacher and community member as well too. And then we also, Hope Driscoll and Sarah Johnston also came in and served on that committee as well too. At the beginning, Jennifer Whitehead from Keene High, she came in and helped us a little bit at the beginning. So throughout the year, we met and we came up with looking at where is this, what the data that we used is the Teen Assessment Project, Monadnock Voices for Prevention, and Monadnock Alcohol and Drug Coalition. So there was a lot of data about our area. So not necessarily just our school, but in our area and how high the numbers are. So that's where we are. And so now you should have that proposal in front of you. And then hopefully our next step would be, if it's all approved by August, to get into the student handbook. And then we'll go from there about how we let staff and students and community members. And then we're also looking at training through the New Hampshire Student Wellness, having them come and provide training for all of us as well too. So thank you all very much. Does anybody have questions? I know it was a lot of information. I do have some of the activities if anybody wants to look at what we've done over the 2 years. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Janine.
Any other members sign up for public comments? Okay. Moving forward, the first order is matters that require board action. We have a motion from Finance and Facilities.
Yes, in your packet you should have received 2 bids, and the motion was to waive the policy since we didn't have 3 to bring forward and present. However, Dave did receive other quotes. These were just the 2 best. The Finance and Facilities only received 2. So the motion is to move forward and purchase the Chevrolet Express van for $27,222 to replace the van no longer working.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Nick?
Just a quick question. This is coming out of an existing budget? This is coming out of our...
This current school year, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Fiscal year.
Eric?
How are the bids, how do we go about getting the bids now? I know how we used to, I'm just wondering now.
So Dave went ahead and he received these 2. He also went to the state, I believe, and received a 3rd, but it didn't fall in line. These were the 2 best options he had received.
Mm-hmm. But do we post them publicly? Do we put it out like in the newspaper or anything like that for a bid on a vehicle so others can bid?
It depends on what we're looking for some of the larger pieces of equipment, we may do an RFP, a request for proposals, which would be posted in that manner. But for equipment such as this, and I think last year we bought something for the landscaping and the fields. We go out and we just seek quotes from different vendors without a posting.
I'm just wondering why we wouldn't approach more of the local dealers, because obviously we didn't on these two. Who is the Chevy dealer?
It's our guy, whoever Chevy is in.
Is it Wallier?
It was the local dealers. is my
Because usually
impression.
we see who we're buying it from. I mean, all it says is Chevrolet. We don't even know who it's from. And I'm just wondering why did we approach the other dealers in the area? Did we approach Fairfields? Did we approach the Honda Garage or any of those to see if they had anything? Because I think we should be doing that.
Concur. Anything further?
Does this include the waiver, this motion?
Yes, it does.
Yes. That is correct. Anything further, Betty?
Which van is it replacing?
The silver one, I believe, that's no longer functioning.
It's gone, she said.
The one that we used to transport special ed kids, or?
When it was working, I believe
Okay,
that we did.
all right. It's one of those 3 original
It's one of,
ones.
yeah, it's the silver bullet, is that the?
Yeah, I think that's what we referred it to it as.
Anything further? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One.
One aye. Abstentions? Okay. You don't believe there are any other motions from Finance and Facilities, correct? Okay, moving forward, motion from policy on the substance misuse policy, and this is for a second read. So, Lisa?
So the policy committee had not had an opportunity to see this. I brought this as an individual to the board for first read so that everyone could have a couple of weeks to look at it. So the board has approved that we would accept it for second read this evening. And as an individual, not on behalf of the policy committee, I want to make the motion that we accept this policy as it's written.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion?
I'm going to add that we do need to add a policy name according to the naming convention so we can fit it into the appropriate place in the manual.
I haven't had a chance to research that yet, but I will make that clerical change before we post it.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous for those present. Don't believe there are any other motions from other committees, so we'll move forward. Matters for information and discussion. Student representative. Do we have a student representative?
We do. I'm going to ask Principal, where'd she go?
Ms. Spencer?
Miss Spencer? Would you like to introduce our student representative?
If you can go to the podium, please. Use a microphone.
There you go. Hello, my name's Justin Bemis. Looking forward to working with all of you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and...
Yep, so I'm a junior now, but I'm going to be a senior next year. I'm currently president of student government.
Any other extracurricular activities that you participate in?
I'm involved in the theater arts program, been for 4 years now. And I have served student government for the past 4 years. I was president of my class at one point, and this year I was president-elect. So.
Great.
That's good.
There's another student tally messenger. We've talked a little bit, both. Either one is hoping to make sure, so Justin's not having to come to necessarily everyone, but one of the two we're hoping to be here for each of the months, starting in September. But we wanted to introduce him. Said he didn't necessarily have to stay for the whole night tonight, but we at least wanted to make sure that we could put a face to the name, and he knows next time he'll have a seat at the at the table, which he's very excited about. A free seat, but
We'll get
he
you a
wanted to come
nameplate as well.
and introduce himself. So.
All right. Student always sits next to me.
Oh, okay. You can sit next to Mr. Smith.
You have some big shoes to fill. No,
Yes, he does.
Our student representatives this past couple years, they were well received by the board, and I hope that you would feel comfortable being an active participant when you see fit. And certainly you are welcome at our table. That's why we want student representatives. And both you and Tally can attend at the same time if your schedules allow, or you can alternate however it works out. I know between Tyler and Joe, it made sense for them to both participate as much as they could, so that because some issues get carried over from month to month or meeting to meeting. So just to put that information for you, and you can use that as you see fit.
Okay.
And welcome to the school board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Feel free to leave early if we go on too late, especially on a school night.
That's part of the job, man.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, superintendent's report.
Sure. You received a packet at the start of the meeting, so I'll be referring to some things in there. I apologize, some of them did not get into the board packet that you received earlier, but some of it you've seen before. The first item, page 1, which is the top, you've seen a number of times, and that is the proposed allocation, for lack of a better word, of this year, upcoming year's operating budget. We were still looking at what we were going to do with late buses. I did request from our bus company some more detail as requested. I have not received that information as of yet, so I'm not able to report on that at this time. I do think that the board should consider making a motion to approve the allocations. And as with late buses, you can certainly approve to fund the 4 as we have in the past. And once I get that information, we can take another look at whether or not we can then reduce. I just want to be sure that we can push the button and roll the budget forward for July 1st.
So with that said, would be looking for a motion to move the 17-18 budget forward as presented, and with the understanding that if you want to incorporate the 4 late buses that we have currently, we can always roll them back. As I stated at our last board meeting, we can either choose to not have late buses, we can choose to have what we have now, or we can choose to have something different in the future. That is a nebulous, we don't know what that actually looks like because of a variety of variables that first student hasn't been able to provide at this time. So is there a motion to do anything with the budget? I know there's discussion.
I would make that motion to accept the budget as written here.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, discussion. Karen and then Nick.
I'd prefer to keep the late buses as is. If I understand the motion, it would go forward as only having 2 late buses. I think we should remove the late buses from this discussion. So I'd make the amendment to remove late buses from the motion.
Would you like to take that as a friendly?
Yeah, I would. I'd rather get 2 now and then see what we get to see.
I was thinking leave it with the 4 late buses as is and Karen with the rest. Thank you.
So is the second amenable to the friendly amendment of having 4 late buses, which is status quo?
Yes, this is inclusive of 4 late buses.
Okay.
What would the
Yes.
cost here
So you would
be?
just double that amount.
You just double the amount of the 28,250.
It doesn't mean we can't discuss it when we get more.
Do we have is this 31,621 final?
It's not exact.
No, I mean what we're voting on.
It would be that 31,621, 337 plus the additional 28,250 for the additional 2 late buses. But again, that's not a firm number. This is sort of an opportunity to show you where we were able to make reductions to try to come in under the default budget. So when Jane rolls things forward, this is going to change a lot. We won't go any higher than what we're allocated, but again, when we first brought this forward, our goal was to try to keep underneath of that default number as much as possible. And when we get to non-public tonight, I'll talk a little bit more about, you know, what we're looking at in terms of the folks we're looking to hire and how it'll affect that bottom line as well.
Is that clear, Wynn?
Basically, we're just approving the total number at the bottom, not any of the other positions they could change.
We're approving $31,621,337 plus $28,250. Whatever that amount is, I didn't do the math.
Along with the allocations on this page.
That's what it's inclusive of.
Right.
But those could change.
Right.
No.
The framework of how the monies get spent potentially, but the dollar amount would not exceed
The final dollar amount.
Right.
Yeah, the final dollar amount would not exceed the 30, actually, let me do the math.
It's a hard ceiling.
Well, the ceiling, I mean, technically your default budget is your ceiling. So the number in bold, again, the administration was looking to try to ensure we came in under the default budget that with the budgets, that the voters had approved. So again, that's not a firm number because a lot of things have already changed. This was that figure itself is more of an estimate to represent the fact that we are underneath the default budget, but we might not be at that exact number. But in no case can we exceed the default budget. It was more of an example. We wanted to be able to illustrate to you, for example, what the impact would be of increasing the athletic director to full-time. So to be able to represent that, we had to put it in context. We wanted to be able to demonstrate to you that we reduced secondary positions, and that total amount that we were able to reduce was $128,793. So representational, but you're endorsing the way that we have allocated the funds.
In practice, we're approving the allocation or the expenditure of the 31,776,272, which is the default budget. Our administration has proposed a budget that is below that, taking into consideration various cost savings and other allocations that have happened. Nick?
Just to be very clear here, though, we're not just voting on that number at the bottom. We're also voting, some of the stuff we've already approved,
right,
such as some of the positions in the top.
Yep.
But we're approving by this vote the allocation in the way that the administration sees fit.
Right. But primarily, just by the way we've represented some of the reductions, again, positions that we've chosen not to fill, and that type of thing.
Anything further? Seeing nothing. We're actually going to do a roll call vote just because it's such a big number.
You're testing me. Phyllis?
Yes.
Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Nick?
Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah.
Sherry?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
13 yes, 0 no. Motion passes. Thank you. And hopefully, I'm hopeful that by July, the July meeting, I know at the end of the year, there are students transitioning into summer runs and stuff, so I know they've been a bit inundated. It slows down a little bit for us. It picks up for them a little bit because they're doing a little bit more over the summer than we are. If we'll go through the packet in order so that it's easier. If pages 2 and 3 of the packet provided for your information, and certainly we can, since it didn't get to you in advance, we can keep it on the agenda for next time to discuss. But I believe it was Scott had talked about, he remembered this document from when we were looking at SRO, SSO, and so decided to include that for discussion purposes. So have it, read it, reflect on it, and I'll keep it in my report for the July meeting, if that works.
Mike? I know this is jumping ahead, but I would ask that we put this on the next agenda. The intent would be to look at the right-hand column, the activities, percentage of time, and understand if we've realized our vision, and if there are activities that are not being fulfilled, to start a dialogue on how to get there, how to get those back on the radar.
The next page in your packet is again for information now, and we can discuss it in more detail in July. But as you know, over the last couple years, primarily kind of spanning between the 2 years, there was a group of folks that met to formulate a district strategic plan, and the real bulk of that initial work was focused on the mission and vision, which this board approved in, I believe, April of 2016. And we've tried to keep that group alive as we've moved into looking at planning and developing goals for the district. And it became difficult to continue to pull people together. And it wasn't just that it was difficult to pull people together, but our discussions every time we met seemed like we were talking about the same thing again. We weren't gaining traction. And so the group endorsed the concept of the administrative team taking all of the information that had been gathered, taking the feedback from that committee, and working through to come up with goals that we could then present. And so that's what this document represents. We developed 4 goals, and the feedback that we drew upon, well, one was from all of the work and all of the feedback that went into that initial mission and vision statement. And we also, with the full group, we had developed a survey specifically to get information about from stakeholders about what should we have a goal. If we're looking at active stewardship, and this is what that means, what should we have as a goal in that area? And so we've sifted through all of those responses. I forget how many responses there were, but there were quite a few. And we distilled some of those main themes. And so that's how we arrived at the 4 goals that are before you. We've taken some time. We've started to look at identifying objectives or benchmarks, activities, if you will, of things that we will do to support, that we would do to support those goals and move them forward. But at this time, since this is the first look for you folks, I didn't want to give you all of that pieces, and plus we wanted to hold off on further development of those until we had a chance to hear from you. So so that's the intent of that. And again, I'd be happy to give you some time with it, and we can discuss it in more detail in July, if that works.
If that's appropriate.
Okay. So then the last part in your packet is a slideshow. And probably about a week and a half before the end of the school year, I sent a short survey out to everyone in the district. We have actually an email address that says everyone, so it hits every employee in the district. And it was very short, and I apologized for asking everybody to do one more thing at the end of the school year. But I was curious. And I asked everybody, why do you do what you do? So if you're a teacher, why did you become a teacher? If you are a support staff member, why did you come to work in our district? If you're an administrator, why did you become an administrator? And I also asked them to think back over this past year and to just think about something that made them smile, that made them laugh, or just made them happy. And then the next question was, tell me, if you're interested, if you'd like to share whatever that thing was. And then finally, the last question was, please let me know, what can I do better to help you have more of those moments? If you go to the next page, you probably have already flipped through, I had 184 responses as of Monday. And that's a pretty good percentage of the total number of employees we have in the district. And so on the last day, was the second to last day, so Wednesday, I asked everyone in the district, all employees, to meet in the auditorium at 8 o'clock for a very short, fun discussion. And I shared all of this information with them. So this presentation that you have, I shared with them. And on the 3rd page, you see a graphic. What I did for that first question, why do you do what you do? I took all of those responses, all 176 at the time, and I dropped them into Wordle or word cloud, whatever one you use, but it's basically you've seen them before, those graphics, and it's a word frequency generator. It takes the words that are the most frequently used and it makes them larger. And when I took why everybody said they did what they did and dropped it into Wordle. That is what came out. Students, children, love, working, school. I was choked up when I was doing this in my office because it was very heartwarming and it was just reassuring that, we're all here for the right reasons. And I took what they told me, that I could do better to help them have more of those moments. And I dropped it into Wordle as well. And you can see the graphic on the next page. But I went through and I read all of their responses and I identified some common themes and some trends, and you can see them there. But folks said that they'd like to see me, and by extension, I think the administrative team, some of the comments were definitely geared more toward the larger administrative group, but to continue to support staff and students, to continue to be positive, to continue to visit schools and classrooms, and to continue to communicate. They'd like to see me or us do more of visiting schools and classrooms. Can always do that. Connecting with the community and not just the schools, but being more of a contributing member of the community. Celebrating staff and student successes, and more communication. And finally, things that folks said that they need or we need, more time. I think we all feel that, but I think more time for teaching, more time for exploring, that kind of thing. Expanded project-based learning opportunities. A lot of folks talked about their work with students in the ecology school and those the STEAM activities and just those project-based moments where kids get their hands dirty, they are given a problem to solve, and you watch the students struggle, and then you watch them succeed. Folks want to have more of those moments. Also a very strong thread of shifting not away from academics, but recognizing that we need to have more of an emphasis on students' social and emotional growth. Janine talked tonight about wellness and mental health and our community, some of the struggles we have with drug abuse and addiction. And this wasn't necessarily specific to those substance issues, but certainly speaks to some of the things that our students are dealing with and trying to overcome in order to be successful in school. And finally, we need an ongoing attention to culture and climate. I think folks felt pretty positive, and there were, some comments that suggested we were moving in the right direction, but to continue that focus, to continue to improve in that area. And then the next page, I shared some of the things that folks shared that made them smile, laugh, or simply happy. And I do intend to go through and sort of curate all of the responses and make them more available. That's my summer project. And I shared with them, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with DeWitt Jones. He's a photographer, professional photographer, and he's really been the driving force behind this website. And I wouldn't say a movement, but just sort of this, for lack of a better word, I guess it's a movement, celebrating what's right in the world. Really just recognizing and looking around you. And as a photographer, and since I was a photography major, because as you know, I was an art teacher, his work always struck a chord with me. And he started documenting the things that were right in the world through pictures. And it's not necessarily, the tree that's right in the world. It might be what the tree represents to you. And so I always just found that was a really fascinating thing. And if you go to his website, I'll send you the links so you can peruse. It's really quite remarkable. So and I shared with the teachers that when Avery was turning 4, so she was going into her 5th year, I had just come off of, I was familiar with DeWitt Jones, and I was, just shared with everybody that, my life before having a child, having Avery changed how I view the world, but it also made me a better educator, and it made me view my role in education very differently. And I wanted to celebrate that, and I also wanted to kind of get back to my creative roots. And celebrate that creativity as well. So I did the Avery Project, and if you're on Facebook, just in the search bar, you can put in the Avery Project, and it's a public page, so you can go to it. And I did a photo a day, 365 days for the entire 5th year of Avery's life. And I viewed it as an artistic endeavor as much as it was an opportunity to just capture moments. And you kind of had to, because 365 headshots gets to be a little bit. So I had some fun with it, but it was a great way to celebrate what was right in my world, but not just specific to my child, but just to everything that project represented to me. And so I encouraged folks to celebrate what's right in their world and to share what's right in their world by emailing or text messaging me pictures. At least one if you want. It's optional homework, but no more than 3. Forcing folks to curate a little bit, celebrating what's right in their world, so that when we come back in the fall, we'll have a portfolio of what's right in our world as the collective staff of the Monadnock Regional School District. I've already received a bunch of photographs, and it's inevitable. I also the stories that go with them. It's been pretty fun. So so that's pretty exciting, and I wanted to share that with you. And I also shared with everybody, and I'll send these around. Everybody got a wristband. This says "Celebrate What's Right," and I just invited everybody to wear it, to remind them to take time to celebrate what's right in your world and in our world, and to remember to take a picture and to submit it. And obviously, I hope that when we come back in the fall, this will be a nice segue into a theme for the upcoming year as well. So I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to invite you as well to celebrate what's right in your world. Make it a part of our world. You can submit your photos to me, and we'll include you in the portfolio. So thank you. Just a couple of other things that we need to address. I do have a grant for the Gilsum STEAM Academy from the Advocates for Healthy Youth. We are looking to approve a grant in the amount of $994.22. And this is specifically a grant to purchase equipment to create a movable cooking cart to participate in the Harvest of the Month program. So we need a board action to approve that grant.
Is there a motion to approve that grant?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Moved. Is there a second?
I did.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
We also have another celebratory note. We received a notification from the Department of Health and Human Services, and I'll just read this really quickly. The New Hampshire Immunization Program would like to recognize Monadnock Regional Middle High School for achieving a high student immunization coverage rate for the 2016-17 school year. Immunizations remain one of the most effective public health interventions to prevent infectious diseases. The certificate demonstrates your accomplishments in ensuring students are up to date with required school immunizations. We had 99.86% of our students at Monadnock Regional Middle High School that were up to date, which is pretty awesome. And the state average of up to date is 97. So we received a grade of A.
That's awesome.
And I think that is all I have for public session. We'll have one more thing. Mondays, starting July 17th, need at least 3 board members to swing by SAU to sign manifests. So not till July 17th, so I'll remind again at the July 11th meeting, but if you're around on those Mondays. And that is it until non-public, and we have the need for L, C, B, and E.
Is there a business administrator's report? I know Jane wasn't able to be here this evening.
Not this evening.
Okay. So moving forward, board chair report. Really the only item under my report this evening is to remind everyone to act appropriately at meetings. It was brought to my attention at one of the last subcommittee meetings, there was a bit of tension and some profanity used. Board members should always refrain from using inappropriate language, regardless. In addition, your act of conduct needs to be an exemplary model for the rest of us and for the community. So I remind you of that. And I also remind the chair people of those committees that if at any point a meeting were to go in a direction that isn't positive, you have the latitude to recess that meeting, and if it is continuing to occur, you can adjourn the meeting at that exact moment. In my tenure, we've never had someone removed from a meeting, and I wish that we'd never do, but that is always an option as well. Our local authorities are very close. I don't think that we'll ever get to that point, but I just remind everyone that we do have a mode to operate and work together cooperatively, respectfully. We may not always agree, and that's okay. But we have to be able to be civil with each other, with our staff, with our public, etc. So that's all I have. So just a reminder.
We had one person removed from a meeting, and then she was put back in. I remember that night.
I wasn't there. I was coaching a basketball game.
Yes, that's right. So I'll speak to that we have had board members that needed to step away from a meeting because things got heated. There are other forms of recourse when a board member has conduct that's not becoming of any professional. There's something called censuring. What's the definition of censuring?
I formally don't know the definition, but it's essentially putting that board member on notice that the other board members don't agree with that person's act of conduct. It's a slap on the wrist.
So it doesn't mean they're off the board or anything. It's not like a real punishment, but it is saying that we recognize that what happened here wasn't appropriate. That's all.
Right. Moving forward, committee reports, technology, I don't believe.
Technology did not meet.
Okay. I was doing the agenda from the road, so I couldn't remember all the committees that met. The Long Range Advisory Committee did meet. Our group is getting smaller, unfortunately. So I invite people, we do have a meeting this coming Thursday. Please, board members, attend. They're very active in working through some ideas. So I invite you. It's at 6:30 in the library. Please attend. We're working through a lot of just ideas, brainstorming, trying to come up with some thoughts, suggestions. As we all know, it's a complicated thing that we're working with. It has a lot of personality, as well as it's a big number. So it's not just dealing with one aspect. It's a very complicated component. Finance and facilities, you met. Obviously, we had a motion. Do you have anything else to share?
We also talked about policy DJ and DJB regarding purchasing and purchasing procedures. And if you haven't received that information from Jane, you should be receiving that soon. That was a motion for those policies to go to the policy committee. Dave talked about the stage, which will be done this summer. The boiler in Fitzwilliam will have to be done the following summer in 2018, as the contractors are already busy. We also discussed the tuition for this upcoming year and setting that tuition. That will be discussed at our next meeting, as well as a few other revenue opportunities that we had discussed when we first met and formed. The next meeting is a change in time because of how the Tuesdays fall. So it will be Tuesday, July 11th at 5, right before the board meeting, and that's in Gilson.
That's why it's at 5.
No, I only she's at the time.
It's because there's a meeting immediately following at 6.
Yeah.
As part of that discussion for setting tuition, are you discussing the issue of what member towns pay to the district per student and how that relates to what we charge external?
So what's going to be discussed is both sides of that, what the tipping point would be, and if there are revenue that could be obtained by attracting more students. Lisa Witt gave us some information about Conval, and they do offer a discounted tuition, although it doesn't seem to be attracting a large amount of students, but we were going to just discuss the issue as a whole further.
I think my concern mainly is that you have some member towns here that pay more than what our tuition
Yeah,
is.
there's definitely more of that too, yes.
It's a big discussion.
You're
When was
welcome
that
to join
date
us.
July 11th at 5 o'clock in Gilsum.
I had down here a meeting of the Education Committee at 6, but we're meeting at 5
Finance and
facilities are at 5.
in Gilsum.
Correct. So segueing to education,
We had a really fine presentation by the lit team. They have a new lit plan, and it will be online shortly. I think it was really well conceived, and even though it was an evening and almost the end of the school year, I think all the committee members were there. It was a very nice turnout. Theme is all set now. It's going to be on August 15th and 16th. There are 20 teachers and 4 administrators signed up for the training, which I think is excellent. Jeremy spoke to the success of the senior projects, and that this year Heather Giello, who's the English department chair, if we call him that anymore, she had all seniors do their projects using technology and be able to do PowerPoints, and it was all students regardless of their abilities. And so we saw that as a nice academic success. And I handed out the starting point, and we're going to discuss at the next meeting developing a charter for the Education Committee. And in the future, one of the things we'd really like to discuss is the homework policy. Is it working, and do we need to resubmit it to the policy committee for continued consideration? And our next meeting is following Finance and Facilities at 6 in Gilsum on July 11th.
so I would ask both of those committees just to be very cognizant of time, because one can bump into the other, and then we have a full board meeting at 7. So
Right.
just to keep maybe a lighter agenda than you normally would, even though I know you have a lot to discuss. So, any other committees that might have met over the last couple weeks that did not get put on the agenda? Okay, I don't see any. So under other, there was to be discussion related to the superintendent decision-making authority. Someone, Rob, you brought this
I
up.
brought that up, and I guess I'm a little bit, a couple of things. A, I think our present superintendent has been here and gone through, several years, and perhaps it's time to grant her, some more authority or take it away from the board. And what I mean by that is, I've been here for just under a year, right? And I'm really sometimes flabbergasted at some of the things that come to the board's level for discussion when they could be decided or should be decided by the people that we charge with providing and administering the education of our district. Perfect example, but again, some of it's legalese that perhaps I don't understand, right? That needs to come to the board. I'll grant that. Tonight we spent time, albeit brief, talking about accepting a grant for the Gilsum STEAM Academy. Is that something the superintendent can't just accept?
I think we have an existing policy that prohibits her from doing that.
Yeah. So I guess what I'd like to, perhaps I'm not as ready to talk about this tonight, but I would like to hear from, or talk to the superintendent, or hear from her if there are areas that could make her more efficient, because she still reports out on just about, her report is very thorough when she reports out to us as to what her activity has been and what she's been working on. But it really amazes me sometimes at some of the things we end up getting caught up spending time talking about that really should never get to this level.
Yeah, Lisa?
I just want to say that we've actually come a long way. And there are a lot of things that we used to approve that we don't approve anymore. Lots of contracts, they come to us as advisory only and not for approval. We're working in that direction. And anytime somebody finds a policy that they find is cumbersome or useless, frankly, or just causing problems, we're always willing to look at it.
I think one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of, and I haven't been on the board that long, just a couple of years, one of the reasons why you don't see people like jumping and going fanatic about some of the things. My first year, we would normally be here till midnight, 1 a.m. And a lot of this has to do with the way Mike conducts the meetings, but 2 hours, it's amazing. We're like, this is the most efficient thing we've ever experienced.
We're here. Any other, Wayne?
Yeah, maybe he needs to see that report that Jane did for us a year or two ago that give a timeline for everything that has to be done.
Oh, the one that Scott did.
What's that?
We have that in the policy.
Yeah. So that could be, and we're helping him understand what is coming to the board, and this is a great improvement we've had already.
Yes.
I can speak specific to the field trips, or not the field trips, the grants. We do have it falls under the gifts and donations policy, so that has thresholds set, so the board can certainly take a look at what those thresholds are and adjust them. Currently the board has to approve anything over $500, so I can accept 500 or less.
Yeah, and I can just sort of echo Lisa Stedman's comment with regard to when I joined the board 6+ years ago. We discussed and debated every nuance of everything. Which that's the New England and New Hampshire way, I get it. I get it. But we have improved, and I think there are still areas for greater improvement. So certainly if board members feel like this gifts donation policy, maybe we need to increase it. We did that for some of the other financial components with regard to bidding, purchasing items, because maybe a policy that was in place some 5-6 years ago, that's we need to make that change.
If no one else feels it's a big deal, I withdraw it.
I think it's something to constantly keep our finger on and always identify efficiencies and making sure that we empower our superintendent where it's feasible and appropriate, and also understand that we ultimately the buck stops here. So if something happens, we should also be aware of it. But I'll keep it on the agenda. I think it's something that's good just to keep reminding us. Yeah, Scott?
One of the themes we had for a season was trying to identify useful things for new board members. And something we don't have on this topic, which might be useful, maybe the policy committee could take it up, is a handy chart of significant things that the superintendent can decide on. What are those thresholds versus specific policies that call things out? So imagine a chart that dealt with field trips, grants, hiring, and whether they're certified or not, these types of things. It would be nice to have a sort of a one-pager to explain where those boundaries are drawn.
School board meeting for dummies.
Yes.
I'd need that.
Yes. Well, no, we've built a few things like that. I don't know that we've done a good job of sharing them every time the board refreshes in the spring, but it'd be nice to have a new board member packet, and that would be a key item.
We have a policy related to the new board packet.
But is it in the new board packet?
No, nor have we done the orientation for new board members in a few years. Yeah, Phyllis?
Some of the things that Lisa shares, it's kind of nice to hear about them, like whether it be the fundraisers or the field trips, and it's kind of nice as a board member to be knowledgeable of that, not to intrude on her authority, but it is kind of nice to know some of that. Yeah. And I think it's nice that she shares that.
Okay. So we'll keep it on. It's should always stay on our radar, regardless of whether it's on the agenda or not. So moving forward, we have, I know the extracurricular committee had started discussions with regard to Nancy Frazier, Mrs. Frazier Memorial. I know the committee hasn't met since then. It was brought up for at least information in our last school board meeting. I don't know that we're prepared to do anything at this point, unless someone had a revelation in the last 2 weeks that is unbeknownst to me. Okay, so we'll keep it on the agenda. I think it's appropriate that we keep it on the agenda as to identify an appropriate memorial for Mrs. Frazier.
That was a nice write-up in the paper. It was nice.
Yes, it was. Okay, so the consent agenda, action on the manifest.
Yep. I'd like to move the manifest in the amount of $2,100,181.87.
Second. Moved, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we do a roll call on this one,
Yep.
Lisa.
Thanks. No pressure.
It's a yes.
Thank you. Winston?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Neil?
No.
Nick?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
13 yes, 0 no. Motion passes.
Okay.
I'll get it.
June 6th minutes. So we look for a motion to approve the public minutes of June 6th.
I would make that motion to approve the public minutes of June 6th, but I would like to make one addition.
Second.
Moved and second. So discussion. Phyllis.
Okay. On page 2, where it says ACES 93 update, I would love to have added that I had asked why Back to Basics was not staying in Fitzwilliam for the amount of time that it has other schools. And on behalf of my town, I would like that put in there. And I was given the answer of low enrollment by Jane.
I would take that as an administrative edit, so if we can pass a message along to Laura.
Yep.
With regard to that, because I do recall
Thank you.
you making that
Agreed.
comment. Any other discussion with regard to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, Sherry abstains.
Thank you.
So we have a few non-public minutes. First is non-public at 8:12.
I would make that motion to approve the minutes of 8:12 on June 6th, non-public.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention.
After I put it in.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
On issue number 1, we had the student present, and I think that it should be mentioned there that the student spoke to the board as well.
Under issue 1 administrative, we can add that the student was presented to the board. So we can make that administrative clerical addition. So next is the non-public of 8:34.
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? One abstention. Look for motion on the 8:44 non-public.
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yep.
On issue 1, the meeting was canceled. I'd like to make that clear that the board canceled that meeting.
So under issue 1, reported that the meeting on June 7th at 4, it was to meet, but it was canceled. That
It didn't get canceled that night, actually. So the but canceled should be taken out entirely.
so
Were to meet is accurate.
I would agree with that.
So is that entire sentence to be stricken?
Just the but canceled.
Okay. So we can end that sentence at 4 PM on issue 1 on our non-public 8:44 minutes.
Excuse me.
So we're going to strike but canceled on that first sentence. Everyone clear? Okay. You got that, Lisa?
Yep.
And Linda?
Linda. I'm just the numbers. I was just entering the next one already.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 1 abstention.
Moving too fast.
Hey, that's why we get done in 2 hours. Look for a motion to approve the 8:47 non-public.
I will approve the 8:47 non-public, June 6.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 1 abstention. All right, so I believe that includes all the minutes. Setting the next meeting's agenda, we have discussion on the SSO, SRO responsibility matrix that was provided to us from the former Ad Hoc Safety and Security Ad Hoc Committee. Say that 3 times fast. Strategic goals, we'll include that. We'll continue to have at least highlight the superintendent authority, and then we'll keep on the agenda the Ms. Fraser Memorial. Nick?
I'd like to have some feedback on, a few weeks ago, we had discussed the PSATs that the 11th graders had taken and the results of that. And Jeremy had said that administration was meeting to discuss some of the options that they were looking at in order to help the students. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, what they've come up with.
Would that go to education first?
It should.
So, are you able to make the 6 o'clock education meeting?
It's difficult for me to get to those, that's why.
So
It's right before the board
let's at least put it on the education committee agenda where further greater discussion could be had, and then at the point that it's appropriate to bring to the full board.
Okay.
We can do that. Lisa?
For next meeting, can we talk about timing of the August meeting for 2 reasons? Because we have an unusually early start of school. Meeting on the 8th gives only about 2 weeks before the start of school. Also, I'm not able to attend on the 8th. I'll be out of state, so hoping maybe we can do the 1st, but we can talk about that in July.
What is the date of that meeting?
It would
be August
be
8th.
August 8th.
August 8th?
So the possibility of moving the August 8th meeting to August 1st. But we can discuss that on the 11th.
Yeah,
When is the next board meeting?
July 11th.
July 11th.
Summer, we only meet a couple times. Retreat date, is that?
CRC has not met.
Okay. All right, any other agenda items? Okay. Again, we meet on July 11th. The summer schedule, it gets a little light. Not that we don't have items to discuss, but we don't meet as frequently as we normally do. So, next order of business would be public comments. Any members of the public that wish to make a public comment? This is your opportunity to do so. For the second time. Yeah, Scott?
If there's no public comments, I'm looking at our policy on recurring motions. There's a couple things we haven't covered before our final meeting of the year that I just want to ask if we need to do something tonight. Have we renewed all the non-certified staff?
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to encumber unspent funds tonight?
If we were going to do that, this is the meeting to do so.
That's right.
This is our last official meeting for the 16-17 school year, so if there are any unencumbered funds, or the fund balance, or surplus as people call it, but it's really unallocated funds. There are some funds If we don't take action to encumber them for whatever reason, like Ferry Beach, they would roll over to offset taxes for next year.
Do we know what is unspent?
She gave you some, whatever Jane's going to give you before the 30th is on that page.
I don't have an exact figure.
We asked in Finance and Facilities, and she said it wasn't available at the time.
Okay, so what's on my brain is, a couple of us have talked, what happens if they get into the floor project on the stage and discover that the amount raised by the warrant article doesn't cover the bill?
Dave felt that he was well within budget
He
for
thought
that.
it was all set.
The work that the contract was quoted ended up being far less.
Okay.
Next, do we have a rough idea?
I don't.
Within like 50 or 100,000?
I can't. I don't.
More than a penny?
It's kind of a problem.
Probably more than a
Does
penny.
have to be done before July 1st. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I make a motion to encumber unspent funds from this fiscal year.
In the amount of?
Can't.
I believe we need to have a...
For what? And we needed an amount and we need it for what?
And it has to be a contractual obligation that
Right.
already exists.
You have to have a paper.
Betty?
What funds were going to cover the other two late buses? Because we just agreed to $28,000 more. Was that somewhere else, or is this the
next year.
place?
We have to be
Next year.
this before the 30th.
Right.
Whatever this money.
Yeah, so the additional funds are in that budget?
Send it back to the taxpayers.
I'm worried that we're
administration
going to
is
wind
not-
up with an emergency meeting.
The administration's not recommending any encumbrances, just.
We have,
But we don't know how much money's left. That's
we have trust
problematic in and of
funds.
itself.
Right,
That
expendable
is.
trusts that are funded with,
And the warrant, and the
Surplus
voters
money.
would vote to fund those with a warrant article.
Right.
It's raised and appropriated
That's the
separately.
reason why we can't do ACEs, because
okay,
Because
so
it's an
maybe I
expen-
misunderstood then. If
It's
it's
the opposite.
already, if it already says that there's expendable trusts to be funded with the unencumbered funds, then they would go in there.
But you have to designate on the warrant that you would use unencumbered funds to fund that trust. So since the voters, use ACES as the example, since the voters did vote that down, we cannot take unencumbered funds and fund that trust.
yeah, correct.
But we could take surplus if it was encumbered.
No.
Taxpayers.
Not to
Aaron,
fund, not to
Amanda.
fund the trust, but to fund the program.
You could, because it's not considered a contractual obligation that is carrying forward. You're actually
Next
looking
year.
at that, the scenario where you would encumber funds is when you have expenses from the current year that you anticipate are going to kind of flop over into the next year. Like last year, we encumbered, I think, $200,000 for special education placements. Those are existing contracts for the most part. So we were able to encumber those funds for that purpose, but we did check with the DRA, and we would not be permitted to encumber funds for the ACES program.
I just wanted to make a note that this is something we had talked about quite a bit in Finance and Facilities, and unfortunately, Jean didn't have a number at that time. The other concern I had was if we needed to, like last year, worry about special education, although it sounds like the administration was feeling everything was fine.
I think we're in good shape there.
It would be nice if we had that exact number tonight, but I think Jane has been telegraphing us all year that it's not very much this year. So I do not see a problem with it going back, reverting to the towns and the taxpayers on July 1st. Because no one has spoken to a legitimate use for it at the table tonight.
Ferry Beach.
But again, I don't know that would be an allowable,
We wouldn't.
for the same reason ACES wouldn't, unfortunately, not.
Burning a hole in the pocket.
Right. Scott, are there any other?
Yeah, there's one other, but
Yeah.
I was just going to mention, even if it wasn't a tiny amount, if we don't have a use for it right now, it should go back to the taxpayers.
the last one on here is to transfer funds related to the food supplemental fund.
Yep.
Which we need to clear out before end of year.
We did that.
We did that.
We did,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. Yeah, when?
You know, that money for the Fitzwilliam boiler next year, is that encumbered?
It's on the warrant, and it just, the work
For
won't.
3 years to spend it.
Yeah, we have 3 years to
Say
spend it
3
because
years
it's on the
on it.
warrant, and we don't,
Yeah,
and.
That's what I wanted to know, if it was on the original warrant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just information.
All right. So no further public comments. So at this time, we'll recess for 7 minutes because I know Cheshire TV is very good at breaking down.
We're gonna get him down to like 4 minutes before.
I did last meeting, but we didn't have to break down anything. So everyone in TV land, good night. Have a safe and fun 4th of July.